Resourceful Designer, episode 52, How a Great About page can attract design clients.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host, he was stung by bees in both earlobes, Mark DeCote.
Welcome, and thanks for joining me today on another episode of the podcast. I hope you have some exciting projects that you're working on this week, the type of thing that really motivates you and gets your creative juices flowing. Now, I want to tell you about a little issue I had this week with the t-shirt I designed before sending it to the screen printer. Now, this was a 4-color design, a burgundy, a kind of creamy beige color, and 2 different shades of gray, kind of a light gray and a medium dark gray. And like I always do, I always contact my screen printer and show him the artwork and get his advice and everything. And he was telling me instead of doing it as a 4-color job using 2 different grays, why don't I do it as a 3-color job and just use the darker gray and screen down or halftone the gray to make the lighter gray. And at first I thought, well, that's a really good idea because the grays aren't that different. And yes, it would end up being halftone. It wouldn't be a solid color, but that gray was only being used on a little bit of the design. And I thought, that's actually a really good idea. So I started thinking about doing that. But then I realized that my client wanted half of these designs printed on white t-shirts and half of the design printed on black t-shirts. And when I told the screen printer that, he says, well, it still doesn't make a difference. And I said, well, yes, it does. If you screen down a color, it makes it lighter on a white background. But if you're putting it on a black background, it actually makes the color darker because the black shows through instead of the white that would show through to make it lighter. Black shows through and make it darker. So because of that, I couldn't make this a 3-color job. And my screen printer was arguing with me saying yes, no, it'll work. Trust me, do it. And, this was a time where even though this guy does screen printing for a living, if I would have taken his advice, the artwork would have been wrong. At least on half the t-shirts, on the black t-shirts, that screen down color, instead of being a lighter shade of gray, would have ended up being a much darker shade of gray. And there's a good chance that my clients would have ended up refusing the job because it didn't look like intended. But by choosing a 4th color and going with a light gray ink, it didn't matter if it was printed on white or on black, the color would be the same. So I just wanted to mention that to you, a little warning that sometimes you got to listen to what your suppliers tell you if you're dealing with printers or if you're dealing with web hosts or whatever, whoever your supplier is. You do have to listen to them because they are probably more knowledgeable than you are in their field. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do your due diligence and make sure that the advice that they are giving you is correct and will work. In this case, it was perfectly good advice if we were printing everything on white t-shirts. But because half the order was on white and the other half of the order was on black, the advice he was giving me wouldn't have worked. So I guess that's my public service announcement for today. Now, I would love for you to join the Resourceful Designer Facebook group at resourcefuldesigner.com/group. We are having some great conversations in there, led by people just like you and I, designers interested in running their own business. And we've had some great conversations over the last couple of weeks. We've talked about project management systems. What's the best offsite backup solution to use? My recommendation was Backblaze, resourcefuldesigner.com/Backblaze, the one I've been using for years, as well as conversations about how to deal with irate clients who make unreasonable demands. Now, some of these topics I've mentioned on the podcast before, but this Facebook group is great for others to chime in and give their opinion and advice. And I know I'm absolutely loving all the interaction that's going on. Now, the reason I bring up the Facebook group, other than my wish for you to join it, is because this week's resource of the week is actually something I discovered via the Facebook group. I was having a conversation with Molly, and in that conversation, she mentioned how some of her artwork had been stolen, stuff that she had put out there in order to sell, on those websites where you can put up a design and it sells on different products. Well, she's had some of her artwork stolen and put on other websites by other people, and she's had to fight to get those pages taken down. And during the conversation, she mentioned a resource that she used, which is actually a Facebook group called Who Stole My Images. And I'll include a link to the Facebook group in the show notes for this episode, which you can find at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 52. Now, I'm not part of this Facebook group. It is a private group and I've never used their services, but I thought it was an interesting enough resource. And Molly said that they did help her very much in giving her advice and tips on having the offenders' pages taken down off whatever sites they were selling her pirated artwork on. So even though I usually share resources that I am familiar with and that I can back up, this is a case where it's not one that I've ever used, but somebody in the Facebook group, Molly in particular, said that it did help her. And I thought, we're a bunch of graphic designers. There's a good chance that you might have some artwork for sale on some website. I know I've have some t-shirt designs that I've done that are for sale on various websites. And if you do have something out there, there is a very good possibility that someone could steal that artwork and try to make money for themselves somewhere else. So when Molly mentioned it, I thought this is a perfect resource to share with you in case you ever find yourself in a similar situation. Now, as I said, it is a private Facebook group, so you do have to ask to join the group before you can see anything. But if you are fighting this battle, why not get all the help you can find? So once again, the name of the group is Who Stole My Images. It is a Facebook group, and I will include the link to it in the show notes to this episode at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 52. So thank you for that resource, Molly. And now on to today's topic, how a great About page can actually attract design clients. Now, the About page, or as some people call it, the About Me page on your website, is arguably the most important page on your site. And yet, it's often so overlooked by people when they create a website. They put all their effort and concentration onto what I call the quote-unquote meat pages of a website. Things like portfolio pages or the pages that mention what services you have to offer. The About page is just an afterthought most of the time. It's something that everyone knows they should have, so they just whip one up quickly, put it on the website, and then move on. But if you've had a website up for a while, and you go look at your analytics to show you the visits to your site, you'll probably see that your About page is one of the top visited pages on your website. Now, chances are, if you do have an About page, you also have a link to it in your menu bar, as most people do. So when somebody lands on your site, and it doesn't matter what page they land on, they will often click on that About link in order to learn more about who is behind this website. Whether it's you, an individual, or whether it's a company, people will often click on the About page to learn more about that person. I know I do it every time somebody joins the Facebook group. If they have a URL for their website, or if somebody follows me on Twitter and I could find out what their website is, I will go look at their website. And the About page is usually one of the first things I go look at. I want to know more about this person who is following me, or more about this person who has joined the Facebook group, or somebody who's reached out to me via email. I will always go check the About page. Now, the problem is if you don't have a well-crafted About page, you could be turning people off of your site and potentially leaving business out on the table instead of turning it into part of your income. So what makes a great About page? Now, people often fail in their About page because, frankly, they're talking about themselves. Now, you'd think that that's what an About page is for. It's called an About page or an About Me page, so you would think it's about me or it's about the company. But the truth is, visitors really visit an About page not to learn who the person is or who the company is. They visit an About page to find out why they should care. What's in it for them? They came to this website from some reason. Maybe somebody recommended it. Maybe they clicked on a link somewhere. But now that they're here, why should they care that they're here? And the About page is where they look for those answers. They visit the page in order to determine if they should be interested in you or your company and to figure out if you can help them. And if they can't figure that out on your About page, then why should they bother looking at the rest of your website? So how do you make a great About page? First off, well, how long should the page be? Now, there's no right or wrong answer to this. The length of your About page should be exactly as long as it needs to be to get your message across, and nothing else. You're not here to write a novel, but then it shouldn't also be just one paragraph. It should be long enough to get your message across and nothing more. Now, every one or every company's About page will be different. So again, there's no perfect formula to this, but it is imperative that you test different things on your About page to see what works. You've heard about A/B testing, where you put two different versions of a page out. You have it distributed evenly amongst visitors to see which one gets a better response. Well, your About page should be no different. It's actually a perfect candidate for A/B testing, for you to test out what happens. You can see through your analytics. Are people getting to the About page and leaving after 30 seconds, or are they spending a couple of minutes and looking at your About page? So don't neglect your About page when it comes to this. Now, a great About page should be divided into different sections, and I am going to list 5 different sections to a great About page. Part 1 of the About page should be the hook. Something that immediately grabs the attention of the visitors and lets them know that they've found the right person or the right business. Here's an example of a good hook. Welcome to my site. Are you wondering how to promote your business? Do you have a great idea but don't know how to present it to the world? Are you tired of your current brand and want something more exciting? If you've asked yourself any of these questions, then you've come to the right place. You see, the hook gets into the head of your potential clients. The hook tells them that you know what they need help with and that you have a solution to their problem. Trust me, if they think you have the solution to their problems, they'll be much, much more inclined to contact you and to hire you. It's actually a very basic concept, but it is super effective. First of all, figure out what questions your potential clients have and list the most popular ones. How do you figure this out? Well, simple. Ask your current clients. Over time, you'll start to know what common questions all your clients ask when you first encounter them, when you first meet with them. There will be certain questions that always come up. Well, those questions, chances are, other people will have the same question. And if it's a problem that they're seeking help with, then nail that right at the start and say, hey, if you're having this problem, I can help you. Right off the bat, without knowing anything about you, the person visiting your About page sees this and says, hey, that's a problem I'm having. You've got them. It's the hook. They want to read on to see what else you have to offer. So if you open up with a great hook, your visitors will keep on reading. Now, the second part of a great About page is where you share the benefits people get by working with you. This is not the services that you offer. You don't tell them that I'm a web designer or a graphic designer or a logo designer or brand enthusiast or whatever. You don't tell them about yourself. You tell them about the benefits they get. What's in it for them? An example might be something like, allow me to use my vast skills and experience as a graphic designer to create something amazing, something that's truly unique to you. I have the knack for capturing the personality of a company and creating something that will reflect not only who you are, but something that lets you connect to your target market on a personal level. In other words, I create designs you can be proud of. You see, this second part of the About page kind of describes you a bit, but in a way that benefits the viewer. Let them know what they would get out of working with you as you describe a little bit of yourself. Now, the third part of a great About page is the social proof. First of all, this is the perfect place to display an image of yourself. If you have a photo that you want to show of yourself, which I do recommend on your About page, you should have a photo of yourself. Put a face to yourself so that people visiting will know who they're dealing with. And if you have a photo, if you've won some accolade, you've won some big award, and you have a photo, share that photo. A photo of you being recognized for something will go a long way in social proof to let visitors know that, hey, this person's for real. Now, this is also the section where you share your accomplishments. Don't gloat. It's not there to say, hey, look how great I am. It's there to prove, once again, that you are the right person for the job. In my case, this is where I might mention that I've been in the design industry since 1989 and that I've helped brand hundreds of successful companies. I would also mention in this section where my designs have been featured or any awards that I might have won along the way. You can also do a little bit of name dropping here if you've worked from some well-known companies, either locally or even national or international companies. If you've done some work for them, no matter how small, this is a great place to name drop. Just don't make it seem like you're gloating. Now, in this social proof section is also the perfect place for you to include 1 or 2 testimonials from clients, praising your skills and your partnership with them. People visiting your About page are there to learn about you. They want to know why they should work with you. And what better way to learn than by hearing what others have to say about their time working with you? Testimonials on your About page will go a long way into assuring visitors that you are the right person because, again, it's not you telling them what's great about you. Now they get somebody else's opinion. And doesn't it feel good whenever you're wondering about somebody and then somebody else, whether you know that somebody else or not, that somebody else says, yeah, that's a great person, or I really enjoyed working with that person? Whether you know the person talking to you or not, you're going to take that advice and consider it and say, maybe this is a good person to work with. Now, the social proof section is great for, again, showing yourself and proving to the visitors that you are the right person. But you got to be cautious in this section. Don't include too much, or you might come off a little bit as overbearing or smug. I mean, if you've won 20 or 30 awards, don't go list all of them. Just list the most important ones. And if you've been out of school for a long time, like take myself, for example, I haven't been in school since the early 90s. I'm not going to mention on my About page that I won an award back in college. Because really, what does that have to do with me today? You only want to share enough of your accolades and achievements to assure people that you are capable of helping them. You don't want to come off as pompous or too proud of yourself. Now, the fourth section of a great About page is where you actually talk about yourself. It's an About page. Most people, you look at their About page and right off the bat is, hi, I'm so-and-so, this is me, this is what I've done, and they don't actually talk about how they can help the client, what they're capable of doing for the client. On a great About page, that's the stuff that comes first. I've just talked about 3 different sections that cover all that stuff. We're now in section 4, and this is where you should actually start talking about yourself. Mention where you went to school, how you got into the business, what sort of expertise you have. Now, limit this section only to a couple of paragraphs, just enough for people to get to know you a little bit better. Imagine you're at some sort of networking event and somebody you don't know comes up and you're meeting them face to face for the very first time. And you say, hey, I'm a graphic designer. And they say, oh, how or why did you become a graphic designer? This is what you would tell them. You're not going to spend half an hour explaining things to them. You need to tell them very briefly why you became a graphic designer. Well, that exact same thing that you would tell them is what would appear here on your About page. In my case, I might tell them that I really had no intention of becoming a graphic designer. The only reason I enrolled in the graphic design program at my local college was to use it as a stepping stone to maybe learn a couple of skills that would help me when I moved on to university and took the course I really wanted to take. But once I started the program, I actually fell in love with graphic design. And I decided to immerse myself fully into this whole career and ended up graduating at the top of my class. Now, in this section where you're talking about yourself, you can also throw in some fun facts or talk about hobbies, likes and dislikes. Like myself, I might mention that I love podcasting and I actually have a graphic design podcast. I might mention that I'm a dog owner. I might even throw in that I don't drink coffee, which completely goes against the typical stereotype of a graphic designer. You can use this section to kind of show off your personality, and it will help potential clients know if they'll mesh with you. I'll never forget, years ago, I was looking at the website for a fellow web designer. I didn't really know this guy, but he was part of a group, an email list I belonged to, so I went and checked out his website. And when I read his About page, the very first line on his About page, he said, hi, I'm a Scottish graphic designer, and I'm very good at it. Being a graphic designer, that is. I'm only average at being Scottish. That was his opening line. And I've never forgot that. That line showed me that he has a sense of humor and that he doesn't take himself too seriously. He also thinks that he's a really good graphic designer. He's told me right there in the very first line. Now, I would know looking at that this is somebody that I would want to work with because I appreciated his sense of humor. And the rest of the page, he had a bunch of things where he was being funny about various things. He mentioned at one point where if we're going to have a sit-down meeting, you better have cookies there for me and that sort of thing. And I appreciated his sense of humor to the point where if I was to hire somebody, I would consider hiring him. And then what that would tell him is by me reading that and knowing that I appreciate his sense of humor, we might get along well and work well together. Where if I was somebody who didn't appreciate that sense of humor and I read that, it might throw me off and I might not want to work with this guy. But that's okay, because if that part threw me off and I don't want to work with him, chances are he wouldn't want to have worked with me either. So remember that your about page can also be used to weed out people who you wouldn't work well with. I'm sure you could think of a client or two that you wish they would have known more about you and decided not to work with you to begin with. Sure, their money might have been good, but the headaches they caused might not have truly been worth it. Well, your about page can be used as a sort of screening process exactly for this. And now we come to the fifth part of a great about page. And in my opinion, this is the most important part. And yet it's right at the end. And that's include a direct link for visitors to contact you. Some sort of call to action for them to reach out and hire you. So many people fail to do this. You just put a great about page together. A place where visitors, potential clients can come, learn who you are, learn your skills, learn how you can help them, learn that you have the solution to the problem they're facing. So don't give them the chance to move on. Create some sort of call to action, some sort of link to allow them to, at that point, they've read all about you. They know who you are. They know that you're the perfect person. Now they have to know how to contact you. And that can either be a call to action, like click here to go to our contact page, or even better yet, put a contact form right on your about page, right at the bottom. Put some sort of line saying, if you've read this and you think that I'm right for you, here's a form, contact me. It doesn't matter if you already have a contact form on a contact page. You can put another one here because at this point, you don't want people to click off of your website without contacting you. And in my opinion, the best things to do is, number one, put a contact form right on your about page or put a call to action button. People like clicking on buttons. Put some sort of tagline on it saying, I'm waiting to work with you, click here, or something like that. It's a lot better than having just a line of text with a link, with some of the text hyperlinked in blue or whatever, saying, if you would like to work with me, click here to contact my contact me page. It's a lot better to have them do it directly on the site than to be redirected. And in my opinion, as I said, that is the most important part of your about page. You just finished telling them exactly who you are, what you can do, how perfect you are for them, and that you have the solution they're looking for. The perfect way to finish that off is to give them a way to contact you. So those, in my opinion, are the steps to a great about page. The page shouldn't be just about you. It should be mostly about how you and your skills can help your clients. So once again, number one, the hook, the thing that tells your visitors that, first of all, they're in the right place. You address their concerns and their problems right away to make them want to read more. Number two is the benefit. What do you have to offer your visitors? Number three is the social proof and reassurances. Share things to prove that you are the right person to work with them. Number four is your personal story, your background, your hobbies, something for your clients to relate to. And number five is a way to contact you. So those are my 5 steps to making a great about page. Now, before I move on, I just want to mention one other thing here. When creating your about page, I've seen this so many times on people's pages. Don't date your page. What I mean by that is don't use exact numbers. Don't put something like, I've been a graphic designer for 12 years. Or if you're talking about in your personal stuff saying, yes, I'm married. I've got a lovely wife. We've been married for 8 years or 10 years. Don't put exact numbers down because chances are, if you're like most people, you are not going to go back every year and update your about page. You might be updating your portfolio. You might update your prices if you do list them, which I don't suggest you do, but if you do, you might be updating your services page if you start offering more services or whatever. But most people don't go back on a regular basis to update their about page, which you really should be doing on a yearly basis. You should be going in to update it. But in case you aren't, don't put definitive dates down. I didn't say that I've been in the design industry for 27 years. I mentioned in my example that I've been in the design industry since 1989. That's a date that will never change. Same thing if you've started your own business. I mention it on the podcast all the time. I've been in business for 11 years, but what happens if you're listening to this podcast 2, 3, 4 years in the future? Well, those numbers are wrong. I should actually be saying that I've been in business since 2005, in which case you can do your own math and figure it out. Now, the other thing I see, and of course, this is on graphic designers and web designers pages, is it is great. As I said, social proof, show the awards you've won. but you don't necessarily need to say when you won them. If you haven't won anything in several years and you had this great award you won and you really want to share it, but you won it in 2007, you don't have to say, I won the award in 2007. All you have to say is that you were the recipient of such and such an award. Your visitors don't care when you won it. They're impressed that you did win it. But if you do say that I won it in 2007, deep down, they might start thinking, well, what's happened since then? Especially if it's the most recent award. If you list 4 or 5 awards you've won and the most recent one is 2007, they might start thinking, what happened? Did you slip? Like, have you just not been caring for the last 9 years or whatever about your business? Why haven't you won anything since then? But if you leave the dates off and just say you were the recipient of this award, of this award, of this award, it sounds very impressive. And the client doesn't really need to know when you won the award or what you won the award for. So once again, that was just a kind of an afterthought about the whole about page. Try not to date it by putting stuff that's irrelevant, dates, timelines, or anything like that that could be outdated after a year or so. So that's this week's topic, how a great about page can actually attract design clients. Do you already implement any of these tips? Do you think you have a great about page? Share it in the show notes for this episode, resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 52, and I will include the active link that will link back to your about page. But I would love to see these. So if you want to share your about page and in the process create a backlink to your website, just leave a comment in the show notes for this episode. And once again, that's at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 52. And now it's time for the question of the week. And this week's question comes in from Michael. And Michael says, "Hi, I'm a staff designer at an established agency. The leadership here does allow us to take side freelancing jobs to help us grow our skills and creativity, as long as it's not a direct conflict of interest with the company. I'm struggling to gain traction in finding work. I have a good set of personal clients that I work with already, but nothing to add any substantial amount to mine and my wife's income. Just odd jobs now and then when my skills are needed. What is your method of finding new work/clients? Which ones have you found most effective, and which methods would you recommend I stay away from?" Well, thanks for the question, Michael. When I started, I was in a similar boat. I started my business while I was still at the print shop, and I was doing web design. And again, I was doing stuff that was not a conflict of interest. And I don't know if you're experiencing this or not, but I was doing websites from home and graphic design, other stuff, print design, I was doing at the print shop. And sometimes I would have a web client that would ask me to do something that was a conflict of interest. And I had to tell them, sorry, I can't do that. If you want me to do that, I have to do it at the print shop working under them because of the agreement. I had talked to them. I told them they knew I was starting this web design business. And the agreement was I wouldn't do any print design. And what I found was that sometimes people enjoyed working with me, but they didn't necessarily want to work with the print shop. And they kept saying, well, come on, you can do this. Just do this on the side. Nobody would know. But the thing is I would know, and I didn't want it to get back to the print shop that I was doing stuff that I had agreed I wouldn't do. And that was really limiting what I was capable of doing in my home-based business. Now, you mentioned something similar where they allow you to do freelance jobs as long as it's not a direct conflict of interest. Now, I don't know exactly what the conflict of interest is or would be between the agency you work for and what you do at home. You didn't specify that. So I'm not 100% sure on that part. But I can tell you that when I decided to leave the print shop and start on my own, first of all, the clients that I already had as web design clients all of a sudden opened up with a whole bunch of other works that they were just waiting. They wanted somebody to do, but they didn't necessarily want to work with the print shop that I was working with because maybe it didn't have anything to do with printing there. They just wanted other work than web design. And they were just itching to find somebody. And when I left, all of a sudden I got a lot more work from those clients. The other thing that happened is I had clients that followed me that I would do work for at the print shop. And when I left, they decided to come with me. Even if they were still having stuff printed at the same print shop, they still wanted me to work on their jobs, their projects. So through my personal experience, and yes, this is going back to 2005, 2006, around that time. But in my personal experience, Michael, if you do make the leap to your own home-based business and left the agency, chances are your existing clients will find more work. Not to mention, you can go out to them and say, hey, now I'm available to do whatever you want. Is there anything else that you would need me for? And if they enjoy working with you for whatever it is you do, then they will enjoy working with you for the rest of it. And as I said, depending on how you work with the agency, those clients might enjoy coming with you. Now, I don't know, maybe you had to sign something with the agency that if you decided to leave, you couldn't take the clients. I didn't have any sort of agreement with the print shop, and it was 100%. I didn't go poaching clients. I didn't contact any clients to come to me, but I did have clients that contacted me afterwards that said, oh, I heard you left. Can I still work with you? And yes, you could. I was more than happy to take any clients, whether they were previous clients or not. The other thing is once you start working full time, then the word starts getting out. You are no longer Michael from the agency who does work on the side at home. You would be Michael that runs his own business, which all of a sudden boosts your prestige and gives more credibility to what you do and the word of mouth. Now people will be referring you as opposed to the agency, which chances are they would be referring to the agency in prior. So keep those in mind. I know I noticed a big jump, and I know some other people that I've talked to before that have noticed the same thing. When they made the jump from working for somebody and working part-time at home, and when they made the jump to going full-time, all of a sudden they noticed that they had more work and more people coming to them. Now, it might not be a lot. And you do have the benefit. You do mention that you have a wife who also has an income. And that was a big benefit to me as well. I had my wife who's making a good income, and I was able to, at the beginning, it will be tough. It will be tough at the beginning as things get going. But you got to remember, you also won't be dividing your time up between the agency and your own business. Once you leave the agency and you start your own business, then you are devoting 100% of your time, and it's all on you, and it all goes into the effort you put into your business. I know when I first started my business, I put a lot of effort into it to help grow and to attract clients and to keep clients and to make sure that the word of mouth, that my clients were spreading good word and good references and good recommendations so that other people would contact me. And that's how I've gotten most of my clients over the years, was just through word of mouth from my existing clients. Now, you did ask for methods of finding new clients and new work. I wrote a blog post a while back on Resourceful Designer that is titled 10 Proven Ways to Attract Design Clients. And you can look that up on Resourceful Designer, or I'll include a link to it in the show notes to this episode. But I can tell you that when I first started, all 10 of those ways, those were ways that I had actually used to attract clients. And each one of them won me at least one, in most cases, several clients. So read over that article and see if there's anything that you could work into your business. Because even though this was over 11 years ago for me, there's no reason any of the methods from that blog post shouldn't still work today. So I hope I answered your question, Michael. If not, drop me a line and I'll see what else I can do. But I just want you to know that it does seem very scary making the move from working to owning your own business, running your own business. But I, like so many others, will tell you it is worth it. It's not always necessarily easy, but the effort you're putting in is 100% for yourself. You're not putting the effort in for another company, another boss, and some other owner or agency. The effort you put into it is 100% yours. And if you do put in that effort, it will pay off. So thanks for the question, Michael. And if you would like to respond to Michael's question or have anything to add, please visit the show notes at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 52 and leave a comment there in reply to Michael's question or to my answer. And if you have a question you would like me to answer on a future episode of the podcast, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback, where you can fill out my feedback form with your question, and I'll try to answer it on a future episode of the podcast. So that's it for this week. Once again, before I go, I want to remind you of our resource of the week, which is the Facebook group, Who Stole My Images, which was shared by Molly. And she shared that in the Facebook group for Resourceful Designer, which you can get to at resourcefuldesigner.com/group. I would love for you to join. Now, in next week's episode of the podcast, I'll be sharing gift ideas that you might want to ask others for this holiday season. Until then, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business, and as always, reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.